Hello and welcome to part 10 of Knitting Machine for Beginners, which is the last bit of technique we are going to need to use before we go on and make a thing. Now you can see here what I've done is I've just knitted a small piece of knitting, and we're going to pretend that this is the back of a jumper, and actually I want to join it onto an arm of a jumper which I've knitted before. So what I've got here is I've got my pretend arm, and what I did was I knitted it up, and then when I got to the right number of rows, I then just changed yarns to waste yarn and knitted a few rows of waste yarn. This is all loose, it can all pull apart, but it's just going to keep it in place long enough for me to do what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is dead simple. I'm going to get my transfer tool, and starting at my first stitch, I'm going to transfer it onto the next needle along. I'm just going to go along, picking up all of the stitches off the sleeve bits that I want to join together, and I'm going to transfer them all onto needles like so. Now then, once I've done that, I'll have two pieces of knitting hanging next to each other on the knitting machine, but they won't actually be joined. So the next thing I have to do is I have to join these two together side by side. Once I've got this hung on the machine, by the way, I can, if I want, I don't have to, but this is a good point to unravel all of that waste yarn, pull it out, and there you go, two pieces of knitting hanging side by side. Now to make this clearer, I'm actually going to swap to a different colour of yarn to do this. Okay, but if all I wanted to do was to join these two pieces together, then all I would do is I'd get some yarn, and as I say, I'm using a different colour of yarn. This isn't waste yarn, I'm just using a different colour to highlight it. Get a different colour of yarn, and I would run 2 rows across it. You can see now they're joined together. This end will need weaving in, but they are joined together. And now I could use one of my cast-off methods, any one I like, to cast that off, and I've got 2 pieces joined together. But actually we can use an additional technique that we have already learnt. Let's say you are joining a back piece, a front piece, and an arm piece, or 2 arm pieces together. You would then have been joining them around the neck. So let's see if we can put a hem on it as well. So there's 10 rows, a loose row, and then 10 rows, I've got a horrible feeling that I can't count to 10, and I've actually done more than 10 rows, but it doesn't matter for the purposes of this. Now all I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my weights off, okay, let it all hang loose, is I'm going to do exactly what I did before, which is to hang up all of the needles, all of the stitches, sorry, from here onto the needles. And because I've done it in 2 different colours, it's relatively straightforward to see where the stitches start. Having said that, when you do it in one colour, because most jumpers are in fact just one colour, it's an absolute swine to do. But there you are. No one ever said this was easy. So you can see, as ever, my first stitch is a pain. It's a tiny little one in the corner. Okay, and on it goes. This time it doesn't matter if you've got extra bits of yarn caught up in it, because it's all going to get knitted together anyway. So that's probably quite a good thing if you've got some extra bits of yarn. Second one is a pain, but not horrific. Again, I don't care that I've got a bit of pink caught up in it. And then from there on in, just gets much easier. And again, I shall bring you back in a minute when I've done all this. There we go, I've hung up all the stitches. Now, it is worth saying at this end of a garment, it doesn't very much matter whether you caught all the stitches or not, because at the beginning of the garment, that's the first row. If you don't hang up a stitch, it will then unravel. But here, we're most of the way through a garment, so it doesn't matter. So in order to cast off, we do our one last row, and then we just cast off using our favourite method. Now, in this case, I'm going to use a deeply unsuitable method because it's faster, and also I'm going to cheat and use a machine I've got to cast off. So I shall show you what's happened when I've cast off. Right, so there we go. And having used a disgraceful piece of cheating called a linker to cast off for me, as I said, disgraceful piece of cheating, never use one of those. Okay, I have cast off, and you can see that these 2 pieces are now linked together. and that there's a hem on the top. You can imagine if that was the front and that was the arm, we've now got ourselves a nice jumper. Okay, now that's the end of the beginner's stuff. So what I might do next is I might start a little series on making a thing, perhaps a hat first or something. But I shall see you next time. Goodbye.